Welcome to Spruce Grove Alliance Church, your home.
Well, this is the last Sunday in Revelation before we pause for the Christmas season. We've been contemplating and marinating in Jesus' second return and his advent, so we probably should just pause and remember his first advent, the time he came the first time, because that's an important event on the Christian calendar as well. We're going to pick up Revelation. So today is going to be the last day. We're going to pick up Revelation on January the 4th. Revelation Part 2. So congratulations, you have made it through Revelation Part 1 if you get through today. Reach your hand up and give yourself a pat on the back and say, good job, self. You survived 10 weeks of Revelation. We have another 12 weeks in Part 2 starting in January as we bring the series to crescendo on Easter 2026. I did that on purpose because we're talking about heaven, the last two chapters of the Bible, so it's going to be a great Easter celebration. But today is a bit of a cliffhanger. Kind of like you watch a movie and then there's a cliffhanger at the end, like it's to be continued. Today's a cliffhanger because we get introduced to the unorthodox hero of Revelation, of the story of all of reality. And it's the unorthodox hero, the victor, that can be the hero and the victor of your story as well. And today, Zach and I, we're calling this a Christological crescendo as we come around the communion table here in a moment. So let's just review where we've been over the past 9 Sundays in Revelation. Revelation 1, we saw this glorious, exalted, resurrected picture of Jesus, this show of force, and all these terms and these images for Jesus that we saw play itself out in the 7 churches. And Jesus spoke to these 7 churches. Remember, there's 2 that were crushed and 5 that were, for the most part, complacent. 2 that he hugs because they're under it. They're under persecution. But 5 that didn't have a passing grade on the report card, and Jesus rebukes them. And then on 2 weeks ago, we looked at this great throne room scene in Revelation 4. And we said that we all like to place ourselves at the center of the story. We all like to place ourselves at the center of the universe, and we gave examples about that, but we saw John see the center of all of reality, and it is God Almighty himself. And thank the Lord, pun intended, that because he has the force to keep everything in line, everything together. And we saw John in Revelation 4, that he couldn't hardly look at the presence of God because the Bible says he lives in unapproachable light. No one can see him and live. And it's kind of like when you're driving at dusk or dawn and you're fighting the sun with the visor and you have to look that way and you don't want to look that way. And that's John in Revelation 4. But instead, John turns his attention to all of the beings encircled the throne. And he describes their response to this holy, holy, holy God. And we see 4 angels, remember, that are covered with eyes, even under their wings, front and back, and they're just gazing at the glory of God, and they can't take their eyes off it. They're insatiably consumed with how set apart God himself is. They just keep saying, holy, holy, holy. And then around those 4 angels are 24 elders. Remember this? And they represent the complete people of God, because there's 12 tribes in the Old Testament, 12 apostles in the New Testament, and they represent the complete people of God. And remember, they were casting their crowns down. All of their achievements are worth nothing compared to the one who is worth everything, worthy of it all, God himself. And so today, we see John still in that throne room, and he's not done. He sees something else. And this something else, as we're going to see, is going to be the unorthodox victor, the hero of the whole story that we're going to see play out in the book of Revelation. A couple years ago, many years ago, when I was a pastor in New Brunswick, my kids were a lot smaller. They were in elementary and middle school, and I would go into church to work a little bit early in the morning, around 6 o'clock, so I could get off around 3:30, so I could be home when they get off the bus. And sometimes I would get there 5 minutes before them. Sometimes I would get there 5 or 10 minutes after them. And they were kind of at that age where they kind of let themselves in. They knew that Dad would be there soon. So this particular day, I got there a little bit later than 3:30. I was about 5, maybe 10 minutes late. And I walk into our house, and my son greets me, and he goes, "Oh, Dad, it's not good." And I go, "What?" And I hear behind him in the bedroom, behind him in his sister's bedroom, Leah's bedroom, I hear this whimpering and this crying coming from her bedroom. He goes, "Oh, Dad, you got to hear the story. It's not good." And so I go in and I open the door, and the first thing I see is this lump under the covers of her bed. And I hear this whimpering and crying coming from underneath the covers. And so I pull back the covers and I reveal this sweaty, slobbering mess. And I calm her down through sobs, and I get the story. And here's the story. She had made, and their whole class had made, this paper mache globe for school. Probably for geography. They painted it blue with the ocean and put all the continents with green on there and labeled them all. And the time came for her, it was about the size of a basketball, the time came for her to bring it home. So she put it in this plastic bag. Remember when we used to have those? She put it in this plastic bag and brought it on the bus. And she wasn't paying attention to it. It was on the seat, and it had kind of rolled out of the bag onto the floor, and it was rolling around the floor of the bus, and it was getting kind of dirty, and she just realized it. And then one of the kids kind of kicked it her way, and another kid kicked it, and they said, "Oh, this looks like fun." So she kicked it as well, and then she realized, wait a second, I don't want to wreck this. This is getting really dirty and dented. I don't want to wreck this world. And so she picks it up, and it's really dirty, and she was sad, but she put it back in the bag. And so when she gets off the bus, she said, I can clean this, I can fix it. And so she goes to the backyard, and she goes to the garden hose. Yeah. Paper mache, you know what paper mache is. And so she just hoses it down with the garden hose, trying to clean up this globe, this world. And so I go out and I evaluate and see the aftermath, and I see this pile of blue and green goo at the back of the yard. And here she was. Her world was broken. And she was under her covers. And she was crying. Because she couldn't fix it. And that's where we see John in Revelation chapter 5 next. John is caught in this juxtaposition. He is caught in this cognitive dissonance because he has just seen the holy, holy, holy perfectness, the completeness of God. And he knows the unholiness, the brokenness of the sinful human race. And he's like, how can these two worlds come together? We sang it in the very first song, in that song that just we sang right here, right out of Revelation chapter 5. Do you feel the world is broken? Nobody looks out at the world and goes, yeah, it seems to be trending upward. Right? Injustice, millions of examples of injustice, inflation and greed, collapsing economies, rising food prices, war at the brink of war, dark agendas continuing to be pushed apart from God's original plan from Genesis 1 and 2 on marriage and gender. Do you feel the world is broken? We all echo and hit and crescendo. We do. We feel the world is absolutely broken. There's this massive disconnect between what John saw, the holy, perfect completeness of God in John 4, and what goes on in the world around. But not just when we look at the world out there, some of us here, when we look at our own world, we say our world is broken. We have the same sorrow. We have siblings that won't talk to us. We have addictions that are ripping our family apart. We have crippling depression and anxiety. Some of us are just financially struggling to get by. People who disappoint and hurt us and wound us. There's uncertain futures. Loved ones taken from us far too soon. That's why we want to do a Blue Christmas this year, because we all get through seasons of our life where we feel that sorrow, we feel that brokenness more than others. And maybe you're there today. Do you feel the world is broken? Yeah, we do. And some of you feel it more than others. And if we're honest, though, if we didn't play the victim and we looked out at all the brokenness of our world, we have to admit that we have probably added to the brokenness as well, haven't we? We all have skeletons in our closet. We've all have things we regret we've done. We've all, shall we say, kicked the globe around and made it dirtier and dented it a few times. Maybe not now, but at certain times in our life, we've all added to the brokenness of the world. And truth be told, too, we've probably maybe even tried to fix it ourselves with a garden hose or by some other means. But we've also maybe made it worse by trying to fix it ourselves. And all we want to do is we just want to curl up into the covers and cry. Who's going to fix this mess? And that's John at the beginning of Revelation 5, until somebody says, look, John, there's this powerful hero that can fix it all. Have a look. Let's read about this powerful hero. John says, then I saw at the right hand of him who sat on the throne a scroll with writing on both sides and sealed with 7 seals. And I saw a mighty angel proclaim in a loud voice, who is worthy to break the seal and open the scroll? But no one in heaven or on earth or under the earth could open the scroll or even look inside. Let's just pause there for a second because this doesn't hit our worldview. So king would sit on the throne, a king would make edicts, he would make laws, and they would write them down on scrolls. So if you've seen the old 10 Commandments, Charles Heston, remember this? And Ramses would say, so let it be written, so let it be done, so let it be written, so let it be done. So he would sit on the throne, he would make an edict, someone would write it down on a scroll, and then they would seal it with a king's signet ring with 6 other witnesses, and only someone, it would go from there to some part in the kingdom, and only someone with the king's authority could break that seal and bring forth the king's plans, to bring forth the kingdom come. Does that make sense? And so then here's what happens. John says he wept, and he wept because no one who's found worthy, who has the king's authority, who has enough power to open the scroll and look inside. And then one of the elders said to me, do not weep. Now remember, John is always seeing and hearing something in Revelation. We're going to see this over and over when we get to part 2. Pay attention to what John is seeing and what he hears. He hears. Someone says, hey, an elder says, hey, do not weep. See, the Lion, the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has triumphed, and he is able to open the scroll and the 7 seals. And then I saw a lamb, looking as if it had been slain, standing at the center of the throne, encircled by 4 living creatures and the elders. The lamb had 7 horns and 7 eyes. Remember, 7 is the number of completeness and fullness. A horn is a symbol of power. It represents, when you raise it up, it's a symbol of ultimate power. So this is complete spiritual power. 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent out into all the earth. And he went and took the scroll from the right hand of him who sat on the throne. And when he had taken it, the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb. Each one had a harp, and they played and were holding golden bowls full of incense, which are the prayers of God's people. And they sang a new song, saying, you are worthy to take the scroll and open the seals, because you were slain, and with your blood you purchased for God persons from every tribe, language, people, and nation. You have made them to be a kingdom and priests and to serve our God, and they will reign on the earth. That should have some deja vu from our benediction every Sunday, right? And then I looked, and I heard a voice of many angels numbering thousands upon thousands and 10,000s times 10,000s, and they encircled the throne and the living creatures and the elders. And in a loud voice, they were saying, worthy is the Lamb, as they're saying, and let's count them, to receive power, wealth, wisdom, strength, honor, glory, and praise. 7-fold worship. And then I heard every creature in heaven and on earth, under the earth, and on the sea, and all that is in them, saying, to him who sits on the throne and to the Lamb be praise and honor, glory and power forever and ever. And the 4 living creatures who were covered in eyes said, you nailed it. And the elders fell down and worshiped. Woo. And so you see these golden bowls full of incense. And what we're going to see in the book of Revelation is that, and it's held by the 24 elders, so that represents the complete people of God. We're going to see that our prayers, that the people of God's prayers all throughout history are symbolized, are represented by this incense that goes up before the throne, that's a sweet-smelling savor to God. Now, what is the prayer that our Lord and Jesus told us to pray when he was here the first time? When the disciples said, hey, what are we supposed to pray? Give us a model on what we're to pray. It's the Lord's Prayer. Almost every single one of you know it. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Well, there's Revelation 4. He's on the throne. Your kingdom come. Your kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. So the same will of God that happens in the throne room, I want that to come to earth. So anytime that you cry out to God, God, come fix this. God, come fix, I need your kingdom. God, fix what's broken in me. Fix what's broken in the world. God, I need you. So every time throughout history that the people of God have been calling, your kingdom come, God, come fix this. That is a sweet-smelling savor to God, and he's going, okay, I'm going to do that. But John here in the book of Revelation, at this moment, he's crying because there's no one able to bring forth the kingdom come. There's no one able to take the scroll from the king's hand, which is covered with plans, front and back. No one can even look at it. No one is able to break the seal and bring forth the kingdom come, to bring forth God's plans until he hears an angel or an elder say, hey, there's something over here. Now remember, in the book of Revelation, we're always paying attention to what John sees and what John hears. It's kind of like, we've said this, the play-by-play and the color commentary when you're watching a hockey game. You know, the play-by-play is what we're seeing. He's just describing what he's seeing. And then the color commentary is the voice. It adds like a perspective and a fuller vision of what John is seeing in there. And so what he hears is the elder says, hey, don't weep. There's a lion over here. But then he turns and he sees something very different. He sees a lamb. He hears there's something at the top of the food chain over here. But then he sees something completely at the bottom of the food chain. And it's not even at the bottom of the food chain. It should be in the ER. It should be in palliative care. It's slain and slaughtered. Now this is an example of a non sequitur. We're going to learn a new word today in church, okay? Latin for it does not fit. So if you're in a conversation and somebody brings in a comment completely out of right field and you're like, were you even listening to the conversation here? Are you in another world? You know, like that comment doesn't fit. I play pickleball once in a while in the gym there, and there's some drop-in days that happen. And Tesha, if you haven't played with Tesha, she's a hoot. She's fun to play pickleball with. She adds so much life and joy to the game. She's just joking and laughing. Pickleball's fun, but Tesh adds so much more fun to it. And so we were playing in the gym over there, and I was playing against her, and we kind of do that fun banter back and forth. And if you don't know pickleball, it's kind of like on your honor. You get to call the other team's ball in or out on this side, so they're at your mercy. And so it's kind of like you have to have good sportsmanship. So that leads to some interesting conversations once in a while. Like, I think that was in, but you called it out, but I don't have any. Anyway, so I hit a ball, and I was pretty sure it was in. But she called it out. Tesh called it out. And so then we started into that banter, like, I'm pretty sure that was in. No, it was out, and I get to call it out. And then we kind of escalated, and she said this. She says, it was out. It was out by the length of a baby's head. And we kind of just froze, and we kind of looked at one another, like, because we all know that a baby's head is a standard unit of measurement, right? Like, not a pickleball, not half of a paddle, not even 3 inches, but the length of a baby's head. Non sequitur. That just didn't fit, right? pick something else. And so then it became the joke for the rest of the game, like, it's out by 2 babies' heads, or the length of a baby. And so it was some might even say that pickleball is a non sequitur because it has nothing to do with pickles anyway. But here we have something that doesn't fit in the world's eyes. A hero of our faith. He hears that there's a lion over here, a king of the jungle that's going to be powerful and ferocious. It's going to bring forth the king's plans. And he turns and he sees something at the bottom of the food chain. And not just at the bottom of the food chain, it looks like it should be in palliative care or an ER. It looks like it's been slain. Nobody names their sports teams the slain lambs. Let's go get slaughtered, right? Maybe we should rename the Oilers that sometimes, but... And the Leafs, okay, so they were even. But we name our sports teams the ferocious, vicious ones, don't we? The ones who do the slaughtering. The Lions, the Tigers, the Bears, the Sharks, the Hornets. We do not name our sports teams the lowest of the food chain, let alone something that's dead and looks like it's dead and dying. This is a non sequitur. And if you even know what they said about the Lion of Judah, the root of David, it makes even more doesn't make sense. The Lion of Judah. So Israel, Jacob, was the father of Israel. He had 12 sons, which became the 12 tribes of Israel, which part of the elders there in the throne room. On his deathbed, he brings his sons before him, and he speaks prophetically over his boys. Judah, by the way, Jesus is from the line of Judah, so is King David. And he says to Judah, Judah, you are this little lion cub that's hiding in the bushes, that's going to pounce and it's going to destroy his enemies. And then you're going to have this iron scepter that's going to completely destroy your enemies. And that's prophecy about King David, then ultimately about Jesus. And the root of David, we talked about David, how David was seen as this most powerful warrior king. Everyone saw him as the Connor McDavid of kings compared to all the other Timbit hockey players, compared to the other kings. Because when he reigned for Israel, it was the most godly and righteous reign because he was a man after God's own heart. Okay? And so people long for this Davidic type king, and we see this in the Christmas story. He's the king of David. He's going to reign for us forever. They long for this Davidic type king that was going to be coming, that preceded his reign, was the source of his reign, hence it was the root of David, but is going to far exceed his reign eternally. And so they long for this warrior type king. And so John turns to see this powerful, ferocious warrior king, bigger than King David, that's going to fix what's broken with the world. And he sees a slain lamb. And this is an example of what Paul said in 1 Corinthians, that God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise, the weak things of the world to shame the strong, the lowly things of the world and the despised things and the things that are not to nullify the things that are. And here we have modeled for us in the very first time in Revelation, what we're going to hit more in Revelation in part 2, is the way that we overcome through sacrifice. Because Revelation 5 calls us to Lamb's allegiance, embracing the pattern that he portrays through sacrifice. And what's interesting, as we're going to see more, is that we too can become non sequiturs to the world. We do become non sequiturs to the world. It does not make sense when we follow the Lamb wherever he goes. When we live a life of self-sacrifice, it does not make sense to them. It's like, what? That doesn't fit. That doesn't fit in how you're supposed to function in the world. But when we follow the Lamb and self-sacrifice, it aligns with, it fits with, it is in sequence with the center of all of reality, God himself and the Lamb. It doesn't fit with the world. It's a non sequitur in the world when you make the Lamb your most valuable thing in your life. But it fits perfectly with the center of reality, God himself. And we're going to talk further about what that means to embrace the pattern of living of the slain lamb, of living a life of sacrifice in part 2. But what do we notice about this lamb? That this lamb looks as if it been slain, but what is he? He's standing. I don't know, and you know, if you've been in the military, I don't want to evoke any PTSD, but if you've seen the war movies, if somebody gets slaughtered, they're not typically horizontal, or they're not typically vertical, they're horizontal, okay? And so Jesus here is standing. This is the picture of the resurrection. And he has 7 horns and he has 7 eyes. And so a horn was a symbol of power, and he has complete, perfect power, spiritual power. Why? Because he's overcome the grave. And we're going to hit that at the very last chapter of the book of Revelation. That what do you do to someone if after you kill them, they come back to life? They have ultimate, supreme power. Just think of Osama bin Laden. Okay. Send me emails. Don't want to get put up. But just think of it just on a purely illustration fact. They spent billions to kill him. They killed him. Now imagine if Osama bin Laden comes back to life and does more 9/11 attacks. Who has the most power? Right? That's what we have with Jesus. Rome killed him. The world killed him. Satan thought he'd killed him. But you can't kill him. He's indestructible. And so it's the picture of the resurrection. But then these circles, concentric circles of explosion of worship happen from around the throne because of the Lamb. And the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders, they change their tune. They sing a new song. And the song goes, "You are worthy to take the scroll and open its seals." And we should have some deja vu from the benediction that we read every single Sunday here, because while you were slain and with your blood you purchased for God, we say in the benediction, he has freed us from our sins. He has purchased for God persons from every tribe and language and people and nation, and you have made them to be a kingdom and priests to serve our God, and they will reign on the earth. And this is Revelation's most favorite way to talk about what Jesus has done for us. This whole picture of redemption. You might have been with us just a few years ago where we did this series leading up to Easter called Richer Than You Think. And we looked at the riches that are of the spiritual riches that are available to us through the cross and the resurrection. And we compared the cross to a diamond, and you see it from different angles, and adds new beauty and brilliance of how the treasure that we have on the inside. And so we took a tour around Jerusalem, looking at Calvary from different vantage points. Victory, we're looking at it from the battlefield. Propitiation from prison. Sacrifice from the temple. Justification, we're looking at it from the courthouse. Reconciliation, we saw it from the neighborhood. Cleansing from the river. And redemption, we saw it from the marketplace. This is an economic term / slavery term. And so here we have this combination of redemption and sacrifice of what Jesus has accomplished for us. Now, I know when we hear the word slavery, with our worldview, we get hung up on race. It had next to nothing to do with race when in biblical times. Almost anyone could be a slave, and it was almost always because of economic reasons. In those days, you did not declare bankruptcy, you declared slavery. Let that sink in. Okay? There was no safety net of EI, there was no safety net of bailouts, there was no refinancing at a higher rate so that maybe you can get your feet under you. This is why Jesus told stories of buried treasure. In those days, they would bury treasure because there's no banks. That was your just in case. Okay? And so in those days, you did not declare bankruptcy, you declared slavery. If you got into debt that you cannot pay it back by the time you're supposed to, the only option you had was saying, I am a slave to the person that I owe money to. But that amount that you owe that person is now your master, still is there. Could we say $1 million, $2 million, $3 million? Who knows? Okay, that's there. Then that master would give you basically the bare necessities of life, give you maybe a place to live, a little shack to live in, and some food to live on, and then you work for them every single day. Now, I need your help with this. Those of you who are good at math, I'm not good at math. Those of you are accountants, help me out with this, okay? So now you're a slave. You've declared slavery. Monday morning, you get up, your alarm goes off at 6 o'clock, you go out, you work all day, you deal with difficult people, your back's sore because you're doing physical labor. You work 12 hours a day. At the end of the day, you lay your head on your pillow, crash, and your net worth increases by $0. Okay? Log that around, you mathematicians, accountants, write it down. Monday, you get up at the crack of dawn, 6 o'clock, you work an exhausting day, deal with difficult people, come home, tell your wife how horrible those people were and doing this, and you're exhausted. After a 12-hour shift, you lay your head down at the end, exhausted, and your net worth increases by $0. Tuesday, you get up, do the exact same thing, and your net worth increases by $0. So I'm not good at math. Where are we at? How much money do we have in our account? Okay, you picking up what I'm putting down? This is Groundhog Day. Every single day of the week, every single day of the year, you are a slave to that master. You are in a desperate, impossible situation. This huge debt over your head. If it gets paid, you're free from slavery. But you have no possible way to pay off that debt. Understand? You are in a desperate situation. The only hope, and the only hope that you have in that situation is someone with greater net worth, deeper pockets than you, to come in and pay the debt that you cannot pay and set you free from slavery. Some of you light bulbs are going on. Here we go. You ready for this? So our soul was in this desperate spiritual situation with no way to get out. We can't work it off. We fall short of the holiness of God. We are sinners and we are a slave to sin, and the penalty of that sin is death. And we need someone with greater worth than us to step in and make payment and free us. That's the only way. And someone with greater net worth, perhaps someone who has the worth of the universe in their pockets, owns everything. God himself, from the throne, steps in and makes a payment from his eternal resources. And he makes payment with the most precious and priceless thing that he owns: his only Son. Jesus, completely God, the perfect, spotless Lamb of God, makes complete payment for our sin with his death on the cross. He dies in our place, making payment for our sin. Therefore, he redeems us. He purchases for God. He frees us from our sins by his blood. There's a song that goes, there's no sound greater than the captive set free. You should understand that we were in this desperate situation that we could not get out of. There's no amount of work that you can do to get salvation. You can't pay it off. It's an unpayable debt. You work all day with zero net worth. You need someone with eternal resources to step in and pay that debt that you cannot pay, and that is Jesus. Pays it with the most precious and valuable, God does it with the most precious and valuable thing that he owns, his only Son. And all you have to do is accept it by faith. But it doesn't end there. He doesn't just purchase us to set us free. He gives us this whole new identity. He gives us this whole new mission. He made us to be a kingdom and priests. So priests had access to the presence of God. We have access into the throne room now because of the Son of Jesus Christ. He just didn't set us free and then fling us off into the universe. He brings us in, and we're in Christ, and we have access to the throne room. And we have ability to serve God, and we are going to be co-heirs with him when we reign on this earth. Back when I was growing up, Hollywood was just as dark and putrid as it is today. And they push dark agendas. It's part of what adds to the brokenness of our world. And I remember there was this movie that came out, and you might remember it if you're old like me, that came out. It was called Pretty Woman. Julia Roberts, I think, was in it, and she plays this prostitute, and this wealthy businessman that befriends her and doesn't take advantage of her and ends up winning her heart over and treats her like royalty and gives her all these lavish gifts and grace. And I remember when it came out, there was this older gentleman in my church that he was like super conservative, and he used to say things like, "I don't watch Devil Vision," and we had heard as high school kids that this guy, that Pretty Woman was his favorite movie. And so that was a non sequitur to us. Like, that didn't make sense. Like, here was a Hollywood movie, and he was liking it. And so we approached him in the foyer one day at church as high school kids, and we said, "We hear that this is your favorite movie." And he's like, "Well, you kids are just trying to justify watching filthy movies, but I'll tell you why I like this movie." And what he said was absolutely profound. Because this is a picture of redemption. They don't know it, but Hollywood has put out a very deep and powerful picture of redemption, of the gospel, of the good news. That this man who saw that this woman in this very desperate situation that she couldn't get out of, is prostitution, doesn't take advantage of her, but befriends her and brings her in and wins her heart over, and he treats her like royalty, and he buys her all this expensive jewelry and gifts and clothes, and eventually she becomes his wife. And he said, that's what God does with us. We were in this desperate situation, unable to pay this debt that we couldn't pay, and we couldn't get out of it. We were slaves to sin, and God comes us and he lavishes us with grace, and he does that through the cross of Jesus Christ. And so it's this beautiful picture of what he has accomplished for us through the cross. I don't think this is working, Dave. Do you know that salvation today? Or are you work trying to pay off your debt? Do you know that you're a slave to sin? Are you trusting in the complete payment of Jesus for your sin? Right after that, there's this concentric worship happens from the throne of these angels, and they're numbering thousands upon 10,000s and 10,000s upon 10,000s. And so the highest number in Greek is 10,000. So it's basically saying there's these innumerable angels that are describing the Lamb's worth, and there's 7 words there: power, wealth, wisdom, strength, honor, glory, and praise. And these angels are telling us that this slain lamb needs to receive the complete and perfect worship of all the cosmos. He's worthy of it all. And then every creature joins in this song. Heaven and earth and under the earth and under the sea and all that is in them, saying, to him who sits on the throne and to the Lamb be praise and honor and glory and power forever and ever. And the 4 living creatures says, yep, you nailed it. All of the praise that you would have been giving to the Father needs to go to this slain lamb, this non sequitur. All of these concentric circles of complete worship for the slain lamb, who's the hero of our faith, because he is worthy of it all. He is the most valuable to us. He is worth the most to us. You know what I find really interesting? Is that we, as a human race, even today, will fill stadiums with 10,000s upon 10,000s, multitudes of people, and fix our gaze and fix our praise upon lesser temporal things of fading glory. We will attribute so much worth to something of fading glory. We will pay literally millions to people. We'll fill stadiums and fix our gaze and say, this is the most important thing. I was at an Oilers game just a couple years ago, and unbeknownst to me, when somebody brought me to this Oilers game, the great one, Gretzky, was in the building. They had done this thing on TSN where they were going to determine what was the greatest hockey team of all. It was the 84-85 Oilers, right? Some of you are starting to cry right now. Right? And they had all the team there, and they marched them out on the ice, and I was in the presence of greatness, and everyone was clapping, and everyone was even like having tears come down their eyes. They were applauding it, but they weren't applauding it for the glory that was present or in the future. It was the glory of the past. And every single one of us, our glory is fading. The worth that we think that we are adding to the world is fading, and it will eventually be forgotten, right? But we fill stadiums, 10,000s upon 10,000s of people, and we fix our gaze, and we attribute so much worth because someone can sing or dance or act or shoot a hockey puck, and we say they're worth everything. But Revelation 5 calls us to fix our gaze on the slain Lamb, to give him our complete worship because he is worth the most to everything. He's worth the most to us. He's worthy of it all. Not because he's a good singer or dancer or he can shoot the hockey puck well, but because of what he has accomplished for us eternally through the cross. He has redeemed us from a desperate situation of our sin with the payment of his own life. And in so doing, he has brought together this holy throne room and the unholiness of us by making payment for that with his bloodshed on the cross. He's worthy. He's worth the most to us because he's able to fix what's broken about our world and about what's inside of us, our deepest need, through the cross.
Thanks for listening to this week's message from Spruce Grove Alliance Church. For more information or to hear past messages, please visit sgac.net.